Space Above and Beyond didn't chase wonder. It chased fear. Mud on boots, breath trapped in helmets, the unspoken math that not everyone launches back home. It wore the skin of science fiction, but it moved like a war film where pilots were assets, not legends, and every mission took something with it. And behind the canopy glass, another campaign was already unfolding. The show was built to last far longer than it was allowed to live. The call signs carried meanings most viewers never noticed. And when the series disappeared, it didn't fade. It set. Like something unfinished that never stopped hardening. These are 10 weird facts about Space Above and Beyond. The war story that got cut off mid-sentence and never stopped echoing. Number 1. Space Above and Beyond didn't chase cool sci-fi. It chased exhaustion on purpose because the creators wanted the 58th to look like soldiers who had been living in the fight, not actors visiting a set. So they built misery into the environment first. Sets were kept wet, then smeared with Fuller's Earth, a clay dust that photographs like perfect battlefield grime. The problem is, you don't just see Fuller's Earth. You wear it. You breathe it. It clings to skin, creeps into seams, and turns a long day into a slow irritation you can't rinse off between takes. The mud wasn't a special effect. It was the day's starting point. Then Queensland turned it into a real endurance test. Heat that regularly pushed past 100 degrees Fahrenheit, paired with heavy tactical armor and sealed helmets designed to look military, not breathable. Air gets trapped. Sweat has nowhere to go. You're standing in the sun, wrapped in gear, trying to stay sharp while the scene demands combat focus instead of please let me sit down. And while the cast fought the physical war, the show fought a technical one at the same time. Weekly CGI space battles at that density meant Area 51 was rendering under brutal deadlines on 1995 hardware, with episodes sometimes being finished and delivered only hours before airtime. The schedule stretched. The days stretched. James Morrison later called it exhausting beyond belief. And the finished show sounds like he's telling the truth. The show got its realism. Now it had to pay for it every single week. Number 2. Space Above and Beyond did not arrive with a normal TV mindset. Fox treated it like a prestige swing because the people behind it had just come off the X-Files, and they had leverage. Glenn Morgan and James Wong were the names, and the pitch was basically a dare. Let us make a weekly sci-fi series that feels like a war film, not a soundstage routine. The visual effects choice is where that dare turned expensive. Around the same time, Babylon 5 was proving you could do weekly space battles with CGI, but it leaned into what television needed. Cleaner geometry, simpler textures, a look that read fast and rendered fast. Space Above and Beyond wanted the opposite. More physical detail, more metal, more battleware. Ships that looked like they had been used, repaired, hit again, and sent back out anyway. So instead of chasing a smooth digital sheen, the show pushed its VFX team at Area 51 toward denser surfaces and more layered models. The kind of look that feels closer to miniatures even when it is computer made. That single decision changed everything you feel on screen. The Saratoga does not look like a clean sci-fi hotel. It looks like a working carrier. The fighters do not float through space like toys. They move like machines with weight and purpose. And the battles read harsher because the ships look scarred before the first shot lands. And the money was not only burning in space. The show refused to stay safe on one standing bridge set. It built big practical interiors in Australia, corridors and hangars designed so the camera could follow Marines moving through the ship like troops clearing a building. That gave the series its boots-on-steel realism, but it also meant every episode carried heavy physical production on top of heavy effects ambition. Then, the real trap snapped shut. Space Above and Beyond was not just a space show. It was also a ground war show. The wildcards were pilots and infantry, so an episode could demand a dogfight above the planet and then a full combat operation on the dirt, with locations, extras, explosions, weapons, armor, and weather that did not care about your schedule. Most sci-fi survives by bottling up. This one kept opening the doors wider because the whole identity of the show was that the war never felt contained. That is why the budget never had a chance to breathe. There was no easy week to recover, no cheap episode to balance the books. The series kept trying to be cinema on a network clock, and the clock does not reward ambition. It only asks one question: can you survive doing it again next week? Number 3. From the start, the plan wasn't let's try a season and see. It was the long run. 5 seasons. A full war story where the squad grows up inside the grind, where missions don't reset, and where the damage carries forward the way it does in real units. That's why the show aimed so hard for weight, discipline, consequence. It was designed to build slowly, not spike fast. But Fox never gave it the conditions a slow build needs. They dropped it into Sunday at 7 p.m., a slot that traditionally pulls in families, then parked it across from 60 Minutes, a ratings monster that eats attention out of habit. And then football started stepping stepping on it. NFL games ran long, airtime slid, episodes got bumped later, and the show stopped feeling like an appointment. Viewers couldn't lock a routine, and routine is what keeps a series alive while it's still earning trust. So the ratings didn't crash in one dramatic moment. They bled. Week by week, the audience got harder to hold. Not because the show suddenly became bad, but because momentum kept getting interrupted. Miss an episode, and you're lost. Catch one late, and you don't even know if you're watching the right chapter. A war story needs consistency to build attachment, and this one kept getting yanked out of people's hands. By the time Fox made the call, it didn't feel like the network was reacting to a creative failure. It felt like they were refusing to nurse a wounded rollout back to health. They pulled the plug after one season, before the series could reach the part it was built for. The creators knew what was coming, and they didn't soften the ending to beg for mercy. Tell Our Moms We Done Our Best doesn't play like a cliffhanger trying to bait renewal. It plays like a show choosing honesty. People die. Answers don't arrive. The war keeps moving, because the whole point was that it always would. It was supposed to be 5 seasons. Instead, it got 1 season and a farewell that hit like a casualty report. Number 4. Most sci-fi tries to impress you with the future. This show tried to scare you with it. Because nothing got cleaner, nothing got easier. The uniforms stayed heavy, the metal stayed dirty, and the missions didn't feel like adventures. They felt like deployments, the kind that grind people down 1 week at a time until the war becomes normal. That tone was built on war stories, not space operas. You can feel the influence of Joe Haldeman's The Forever War in the way distance and time aren't exciting, they're cruel. The farther you go, the more home turns into a place you can't return to the same way. And the show treats that like a quiet kind of damage that never stops spreading. And the structure wasn't made for Monster of the Week comfort either. It was modeled after Combat, the World War II unit series where the question is never how do we win, it's who survives this one. Orders come down, the squad moves, somebody doesn't make it back, and next week the war is still there like it never noticed the loss. That's why the 58th doesn't feel like a crew on a ship. They feel like a unit in the field. Underneath that, the philosophy leans closer to the Starship Troopers novel than flashy military sci-fi. Service as identity, discipline as survival, a system that decides who counts based on what they're willing to endure. So the show keeps circling hierarchy, training, and obedience. Because in this world, your personality doesn't matter as much as whether you can hold the line. That is the trick of Space Above and Beyond. It doesn't make war cool by putting it in space. It makes space feel colder by showing war never changes. That tone only works if the person in command is undeniable. Number 5. McQueen wasn't written as a TV commander. He was written like authority with history on it, the kind of Marine who doesn't need volume to control a room because the weight is already in his posture, and that made him the hardest role to cast. Because if McQueen feels fake for even a second, the whole war starts feeling like a costume. Fox wanted something safe and familiar, a clean type the audience would instantly accept as command. But Glenn Morgan and James Wong kept rejecting that version because they weren't looking for a boss. They were looking for someone you'd follow into a situation that can't be won. For roughly 3 months, that tug of war dragged on, not because they enjoyed the fight, but because they knew the tone of the series would live or die on this one presence. Then James Morrison walked in, and the problem stopped being theoretical. His audition didn't feel like an actor trying to nail a scene. It felt like a briefing. He delivered McQueen's pilot monologue with calm control, holding eye contact like the room was part of the chain of command. And it wasn't a small, friendly casting session either. Around 25 Fox executives were sitting there, watching him closely, waiting for the performance to bend toward them. It didn't. Morrison didn't charm the room. He didn't soften the edges. He made the character real by treating the moment like it mattered, and the shift was immediate. You can picture it. People who came to judge him suddenly realizing they're sitting straighter, listening harder, because the role finally has gravity. He was offered the part that night, and it's easy to understand why. Once he's in the show, McQueen becomes the steady center the wild cards orbit around, especially when missions go sideways, and the war starts eating people faster than the script can mourn them. The series didn't find its authority through dialogue or rank pins. It found it the instant one actor walked in and made a room full of executives feel like they'd just been given orders. Number 6. This show never chased fame the way network TV usually does. No stunt casting to spike ratings. No weekly look who showed up moment. No celebrity wink to remind you it's just entertainment. The people who stepped into this world weren't there to decorate the frame. They were there to make the war feel real. The clearest signal hits early, and it is not subtle at all. The drill instructor character in the pilot is played by R. Lee Ermey, not a random tough guy, a real former Marine, and the face audiences already associated with military brutality through Full Metal Jacket. The moment he's on screen, the tone hardens. Training stops being a montage. Hierarchy stops being set dressing. The series is basically telling you right up front, we mean this. Then the series starts pulling from the same creative bloodstream that built its reputation in the first place. Glenn Morgan and James Wong came out of the X-Files, and instead of chasing star power, they pulled in faces that carried a specific kind of trust. Doug Hutchison shows up as Elroy L., and if you knew him as Eugene Toombs, you already felt the warning in his presence. He doesn't have to do anything flashy. He just stands there and the scene tightens. Even the surprising casting follows that same logic. Coolio appears as the Bacchus host, but the show doesn't use him like a novelty. It doesn't pause to sell the cameo. It drops him into the world as something unsettling and off balance, and the performance leans into that discomfort instead of fighting it. The message stays consistent. Nobody is here to lighten the mood. Everyone is here to deepen it. That is the quiet strategy underneath the guest appearances. Space Above and Beyond didn't collect celebrities. It collected credibility, one choice at a time, until the war felt like a place you could actually die in. Once a show sets that tone, it changes how you watch every mission after, because you stop scanning for famous faces. You start scanning for who is not coming back. Number 7. Those call signs don't just sound good in a cockpit. They do storytelling work. The 58th Squadron is nicknamed the Wildcards, and the playing card theme isn't there for style points. It's a quiet system that tells you who these people are before they even speak. Shane Vanson flying as Queen of Diamonds is a perfect example. Earlier drafts reportedly lean toward Ace, but Queen lands differently. It suggests control under pressure, someone built for coordination and protection, not just solo brilliance. And that's who Vanson becomes, the stabilizer, the one who keeps the squad from flying apart. Nathan West as King of Hearts is even cleaner. He's the conscience, the guy still trying to believe the war has rules worth following, even when the weak keeps proving otherwise. Hearts frames him as the unit's moral center, and King gives him weight, like he is carrying that burden on purpose. Cooper Hawks, being Jack of Spades, cuts the deepest, because the name carries his situation. Hawks is an in vitro, a tank, grown and conscripted, treated like property from day one. Spades marks him as the outcast piece in the deck, and Jack makes him the one who gets played over and over, whether he belongs or not. Paul Wang as Joker looks simple at first, but it turns darker the longer you sit with it. Wang's humor isn't there to lighten the war, it's a shield. The Joker is the piece nobody takes seriously until the moment it's gone, and the silence hits harder than the joke ever did. Then, the most iconic call sign in the whole series doesn't belong to a wild card at all. It belongs to their commander. Queen 6. On the surface, 6 is real-world radio logic. It designates the commanding officer, so every time you hear it, you instantly understand who has authority, without the show explaining anything. But the Queen part adds the sting. McQueen is also an in vitro, someone society treats as disposable, yet here he is holding command. The title becomes a statement. Rank earned, prejudice challenged, leadership proved under fire. That is why fans remember it, not as a cute theme, as code, as identity, as the sound of order cutting through chaos. Number 8. Most shows leave behind quotes, screenshots, and a few dusty forum threads. This one left behind something you can't stream, because in the middle of that punishing production, while everyone was exhausted, filthy, and running on pure momentum, two people quietly found each other inside the chaos. Kristen Cloak was part of the cast. Glenn Morgan was shaping the series from the top as a co-creator, and somewhere between long nights, brutal shoot days, and a war story that never let anyone breathe, the connection stopped being professional. It turned permanent. They married in 1998. 4 kids later, that show still hadn't faded out of their real life. And here's the detail that makes it feel almost unreal. At their wedding, Cloak didn't walk down the aisle to the usual song everyone forgets the second it ends. She walked to her character's theme music from the series, arranged for a string quartet. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't nostalgia bait. It was a real, intimate echo of the world they survived together. That arrangement came from Shirley Walker, the show's musical producer, which means the series didn't just leave a memory. It left a sound, a piece of its own DNA, repurposed into a private moment that had nothing to do with ratings or network decisions. That's why the show's afterlife feels different. On screen, it ended in loss, unfinished war, and the kind of closing note that still stings. Off screen, it quietly did the opposite. It built built a future. And when a series can vanish after one season, but still leave behind marriages, friendships, and life-altering bonds, it proves something that Fox's schedule never measured. The show didn't just tell a war story, it pulled people into one, and some of them came out with a family. Number 9. Some shows get canceled and vanish like they never existed. This one got canceled and left a shadow, because after one season, it didn't feel like a story ended. It felt like a campaign cut off mid-mission, with the hardest part still ahead. That's why it keeps getting pulled back into the conversation years later, usually with the same label attached: gone too soon. Not as a cute nostalgia tag, but as a warning. This was military sci-fi before television knew how to hold military sci-fi. What made it sting wasn't just the setting, it was the mindset. The show treated war as erosion, trauma that stacks, orders that don't care how tired you are, heroes that don't get rewarded for being brave. It didn't reset to zero at the end of an episode, and it didn't soften the cost just because it was network TV. And then the genre caught up. You can see the fingerprints all over what came after, especially in the series that defined the next era. The shaky handheld tension, the carrier-based operations, pilots as assets, not icons, commanders forced into choices that feel ugly, even when they're necessary. Ronald D. Moore's Battlestar Galactica didn't invent that mood from nothing. It amplified a language space had already been speaking. Then you spot it again in modern soldier-focused sci-fi, where the center of gravity isn't the alien, it's the unit. Chain of command, replacement stepping into dead people's gear, the emotional weight of surviving when your friend didn't. Even when the budgets got bigger and the tech got cleaner, that core idea stayed the same. War first, sci-fi second. That's the strange reversal that keeps fans loyal. The show that didn't get to continue ended up teaching the genre how to continue. It didn't need a second season to matter. It just needed to land early, plant the tone, and prove that space could feel like a battlefield instead of a fantasy. And once that idea existed, science fiction never fully went back. Number 10. Nearly 30 years later, fans are still waiting for a rerun moment that turns into a revival rumor, a remaster, a reboot, anything that says this story is not just a missing season, but a war that still has an ending somewhere. Because the way it stopped never felt like a finale. It felt like the signal got cut mid-sentence. And the reason the demand won't die is simple. People don't want a new version. They want the same world to keep moving, the same squad, the same scars. They want to know what happens after attaching yourself to a unit that keeps losing people, then watching the show disappear before it can tell you what the losses meant. The timing is also completely different now. The things that crushed the series in the 1990s are exactly the things modern television handles without blinking. Serialized storytelling is normal. Dark military sci-fi is not a risk, it is a category. Effects-heavy space combat is no longer a weekly miracle held together by exhaustion and deadlines. Longer seasons are not required, and a tighter order can still feel expensive, still feel cinematic without breaking the crew. So the question becomes the fun part. If it ever comes back, what does back even mean? The cleanest path is the one that honors the original without pretending time did not pass. Set it decades later. The surviving wildcards are older now, carrying a war that never really ended. They are not kids being broken by the machine anymore. They are the ones training the next wave, giving orders they hate giving, trying to keep new pilots alive while the old ghosts keep showing up in every mission briefing. Same conflict, new generation, the past still bleeding into the present. That kind of return would not be nostalgia. It would be payoff. And hopefully one day someone finally builds the runway for it. Right now though, it is still just a signal fans keep listening for, waiting to hear it come through again. No date, no confirmation, just the hope that the story did not die. It only went quiet. That's what's left behind. A story that didn't get to finish, but still changed how everything after it chose to fight, to suffer, and to survive. If this one stayed with you, tell me what you think it deserves now. Drop your take in the comments and subscribe if you want more stories like this, the ones that didn't fade, even when the lights went out.